Okay, right. Welcome everyone who's here. Hopefully a few more people will come in. So we're going to start this afternoon's session with a few presentations from internal and external funders around how to obtain translational funding. So I'm not going to do big introductions. We'll just funnel through people, and then after the presentations, we'll have 10 or 15 minutes for sort of some Q&A time before we then move on to the final two speakers from this session. So we'll kick things off then with talks from Joe and Alessandro from two of the internal funding schemes, the IA and Translation Manchester.
Thanks, Sam, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alessandro, and together with Fiona, who is somewhere here in the room over there, I manage Translation Manchester, who is hosting this event today, as you have heard in several presentations this morning. In the next 5 to 10 minutes, together with our colleague Joe from the KE team, we will tell you a little bit about some of the internal funding opportunities, some of which you've heard about this morning from Professor Nigel Hooper. Before we do that, though, I wanted to introduce you, or probably you're already familiar with it, with the concept of the Translational Funding Valley of Death. So as you know, there is plenty of funding available for basic research at the discovery stage from Research Council, from charities, and there is also plenty of funding available at the later stage of translation, when your innovation, your science has got that commercial potential, and that normally comes from commercial funding source. But where we really struggle is to get that funding at that translational stage, to get your discovery science into technology implementation. And hopefully in the next 1.5 hours, we will be able to give you a little bit of an indication on how you get that money and what are the tips and tricks to get that directly from us internally and from the funders externally. Another concept that is very important for translational research in general, for funding in particular, is that the funding is normally incremental in nature. So it's not like just your traditional research project. You get the money, you do your research, you write it up and publish your outputs. Normally, the next stage of translational research is getting that next bit of money, which is normally more than you have just got, to lead to final impact. But it all starts with that initial investment from your institution, usually devolved from an external funder, to fund your idea at the initial stage. And that's what Translation Manchester was funded for. We ran an annual call, which is called Translation Manchester Accelerator Awards. We've heard about this morning. And we have 2 schemes within this call: the Access to Expertise, which is funded by Wellcome, and the Confidence for Translation, which is funded by both Wellcome and the UKRI MRC Impact Accelerator account. Again, Nigel has mentioned some of these details this morning, and this is just about telling you when they're happening. So we have Access to Expertise, as Nigel said, allow you to apply to up to 25K to access external expertise to your research group. That can be internal to the university, could be an external consultant, and it's all aimed at getting that expertise to progress your research across the pipeline. It normally pays for the consultant salary, really. And then we have the Confidence for Translation, new name for this, but it's actually what we used to call Project for Translation or Confidence in Concept, that merged into one. And that's just a traditional research project. Up to 75K can be awarded to overcome a translational bottleneck. The calls are opening next year, and for the first time, we're not running them together. So we're going to run HUE early in the year, whereas we're going to open C40 in the spring and run the call in the summer, as we usually do. And this is just a slide that Nigel also showed it before, and it's just to show you that we do support every project across the full pipeline, but the focus is really in that translational funding valley of death that I showed you before. And excitingly, coming in 2023, as Nigel mentioned before, Innovation Labs, ECR competition, and Access to Tissue funding call. Innovation Lab, we actually ran one early this year. This is about getting some businesses in with their own business challenge, and then we try to match that business and that challenge with academic expertise. We put them together in a room, in a facilitated workshop in one single day, trying to solve that challenge and come up with a solution. That solution is then pitched to a panel, and the funding can be awarded on the day. We ran that successfully this May, and that was around digital health and AI together with the Punkers, and which funded actually 4 new projects. But next year in May, we're going to run another one with the topic being around diagnostics. So we're going to be working together with our colleagues in MFT and the BRC around that. In terms of ECR competition, again, this is focused on supporting early career researchers. We've been doing this together with CARD in the past few years. We funded 9 projects that led to significant outputs, as you can see on the top of that slide. And from next year, we're going to run it independently. We're hoping to fund 9 projects, a very small pot of money, but for early career researchers, postdoc and fellow, this is very important to establish independence in the translational space to then go on and getting an external funding support. And this call is also going to open in the spring. If you want more detail, just stay tuned in our website or on our newsletter, or just come and talk to us. And finally, this is a completely new call. It's going to be a one-off. It's very relevant for today because we're going to offer up to 30K for PI to work together with the biobanks to access tissue. The biobank needs to be part of the TMRN. Every PI can apply for one pot of money, but the biobank can support more than one application in the same call. And again, we're going to open early in the new year. So I hope that was a good overview of what Translation Manchester has to offer. Before I hand it over to Joe, I just got this slide showing you a QR code to go and access that translational bottleneck survey that Nigel mentioned this morning. This is how you tell us what bottlenecks you're experiencing so that we can really shape our program in the next couple of years. And also, coincidentally, to give us some feedback on the event today. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi everybody, my name's Joanne Summers and I sit in the Knowledge Exchange team, which is part of the wider business engagement and knowledge exchange team within the university. So what is our role? So the KE team actually look after the UCRI Impact Acceleration Account, which is a combined award from 5 research councils, AHRC, EPSRC, BBSRC, MRC, and MRC. The value of the IAA is 5.6 million, and that enables us to offer funding across the university for staff. And in addition to the IAA, we look after the university's KTP portfolio. We've currently got 29 awarded KTPs with a value of around £8 million. So the team actually supports partnerships, so collaborations with external organisations that can co-develop, co-design and embed solutions within that partner organisation. So how do we do that? We've got a mechanism of support tools that we're able to utilise, starting with very early engagement and low cost input for external partners through the IAA with relationship development, and we can work right through to a much bigger investment and a cost and time for the external partner with KTPs. And within the KTP family, there is now 4 different types of KTP that Innovate UK have brought on stream. And we've currently got 27 core KTPs. We've got 2 management KTs and 5 short accelerated KTPs. So just digging into a little bit more detail of what that funding gives us. So academic colleagues and external partners can start either very early with research relationship development, which is typically short projects under 6 months in duration. The IAA funding will enable us to give a grant of up to 10k. There is an open call for this funding, so we just ask colleagues to approach us at any time when they have an opportunity. We can then move on to proof of concept, which typically is a project that lasts around 6 to 9 months, and the IAA grant will contribute up to a maximum of 30k. And then we offer secondment opportunities either in or out of the university, which are a bigger commitment in terms of time and contribution from the business partner. So they're typically projects ranging between 12 and 18 months. So some projects actually work the way through all three, or some can just start, if they've got confidence in the knowledge and the project, at just one. We've currently got a call open for the IAA, which closes on the 7th of December, and I'd just encourage colleagues to come and talk to us if they want more information about either three schemes. Then we can support with the KTP applications. So a KTP really does start with a business partner, and it's about addressing a need or a challenge within an external partner that they have a knowledge gap. They can't resolve it themselves, so they look to a knowledge base, an academic, to help deliver their project collaboratively with them. With the award, it enables us to recruit a KTP associate, and their role is actually to deliver the project supervised by the academic team within the business partner, crucially. The grant rate from Innovate UK for KTP is 67% of the eligible costs are covered for SMEs, 50% for large companies, and if we're working with a not-for-profit or a charity, the grant rate from Innovate is 75%. And as we can see there, in Wales, up until March, all SMEs get 75% grant rate. We can work with any sector other than public. Projects range from anything from 12 to 36 months. They can go up in monthly increments, and it can be in any research discipline or sector. The criteria around the size of the partner usually is they must have at least 4 employees and be financially robust. But other than that, we can work with any type of organisation other than public. Submission points for KTP every 8 weeks, and the whole process is fully supported by our team in writing the bid, identifying the right funding route. So it's fully supported funding. So I'd just quickly like to show you a quick case study, and this was a great one through our IAA funding, which was a collaboration between staff within science and engineering, the engineering school, and colleagues within Wythenshawe Hospital, and it was to look at some PPE. It was a respiratory hood to help with the fight against COVID. So I'll just play you a short video. Let's see if this will work.
The bubble is going to turn into a product that has been born out of those lived experiences of the healthcare workers, rapidly designed, developed, and has got the potential to improve healthcare and patient care all around the world.
So we have got the really early prototype with us on our stand for the bubble pepper, and we've got the full video if anybody's interested in looking at that in a little bit more detail. So how can KE support partnerships? We can help connect academics with businesses. We can collaborate with you to help scope out the project, make sure it's eligible within the criteria of the funding. We can help you identify which is the right funding route to go into. And then once projects are awarded, we assist with all the recruitment of the PDRA, the associates that are needed to be employed to work on the project. And we actually keep a relationship with the partnership right through from launch to completion. We help with any returns, we do the claims, so it is a fully supported process that the team provide. So that's me, and that's our link to our website, StaffNet pages, which has got information on the calls, both for IAA and KTP. It's got guidance on there about eligibility, criterias, and we've also got a range of case studies which you might find of interest. Thank you.
So thank you, Ali and Joe, for that. So our next speaker is Laura from LifeArt.
Yes, thank you. My name's Laura Stennett. I'm a business manager at LifeArt, and I'm really thrilled to be here today to talk to you a little bit about some of the translational funding opportunities we have. So just to give you a very quick whistle-stop tour through who we are. So at LifeArt, we consider ourselves to be early-stage translation specialists. So we're a self-funded medical research charity focused specifically on advancing early scientific discoveries to a point where they can be further developed into the next generation of diagnostics, treatments and cures for patient benefit. So in terms of where we position ourselves within the sort of translational landscape, really LifeArt are there to bridge the gap between the lab and patients. And I'm sure I don't need to tell this audience that life sciences research is full of exceptional ideas, and unfortunately many are lost along the way. And as they never sort of make it out of the lab due to this valley of death that's been alluded to earlier. So LifeArt positioned really to try and translate that early research through to the later stages of development to hopefully reach the market for patients. So in terms of our offerings at LifeArt, we cover a sort of a range of activities, the first of which is providing translational advice. So we provide technology transfer support and advice for researchers, for our charity partners and for clients, including the MRC. And that involves sort of protecting and managing intellectual property, reviewing research portfolios to sort of identify the translational potential of various projects. And we also help with funding and sort of scoping out the development path and routes to market as well. We also have internal scientific capabilities. So we have laboratories in Stevenage and Edinburgh and a dedicated team at the Francis Crick in London. And this effort really centres around sort of advancing research into early stage drug discovery, from sort of validating drug targets through to progressing early stage compounds. We also collaborate with partners on assay design and development and clinical validation for diagnostics. And then our final sort of offering, as it were, is translational funding, which is what I'm obviously here to talk to you a little bit more about. And that really looks to address some of the financing gaps in that translational journey. So in the interest of time, I won't go into too much detail, but I wanted to run through some of the offerings we have. So the first being our philanthropic fund. So this provides grants to researchers for advancing new treatments for rare and ultra-rare diseases. We also have our Pathfinder Awards, which we launched earlier this year, which were awarded to 6 universities across the UK, Manchester being one of them, who have a track record in excellence in rare disease research. And then just to quickly highlight some of our other funding mechanisms, we also launched this year a Gene Therapy Innovation Fund, which is a £5 million annual fund to develop gene therapy technologies from sort of early preclinical stages through to exploratory trials. And we're also lucky enough to have an early venture team who are able to make sort of seed and Series A investments into early stage companies. So just to talk to you a little bit more about our philanthropic fund. So as I mentioned, this is grant funding for UK-based academics focused on rare and ultra-rare diseases. And these really are projects which have a high unmet medical need and sort of a clear patient population which are currently underserved. And importantly, we look for projects which have a strong scientific rationale underpinning them. Now, our philanthropic fund is slightly different to some of the external grant funding mechanisms you may be aware of, because we like to work in a very collaborative way. And we will work very closely with our applicants right from the very start of the process, all the way through to the panel meeting and then the eventual funding, in order to really help applicants shape their projects into sort of really target-driven projects. We help them identify smart milestones and therefore put together a credible delivery plan. We also obviously have lots of engagement with our applicants, to try and identify the route to patients. And as sort of experts in intellectual property, we also help advise on various IP and commercialization aspects as well. So just to highlight where our LifeArt philanthropic fund sits, really we will fund anything from sort of fairly early discovery stage, which is underpinned by some in vitro or in vivo data, all the way through to early phase clinical trials. And we have 2 funding rounds per year, and we're able to fund projects for up to 3 years, up to £1 million. So just to quickly highlight the Pathfinder Award, as I mentioned, this was a £500,000 award which were awarded to 6 universities, including the University of Manchester. And we wanted really to fund internal early stage projects with a focus on translational development in the rare and ultra rare disease space, so that we could help to identify and progress these projects in order, and also to sort of encourage others to move into this space. And really, we see this funding as sort of a pump prime initiative for translational research projects, the idea being that we're able to build capacity for future rare disease centres, which we're looking to launch next year, which will be a £40 million investment in the rare disease space. So I was asked, when putting this together, to sort of highlight some top tips for applicants. And what I really wanted to do is sort of flag the key areas that we tend to see in which applicants have issues or are maybe not used to sort of articulating these aspects of the application. So the first being sort of unmet medical need, and being able to really articulate who the patient population is that technology is being developed for. So what we really ask is applicants to consider the current clinical pathway, sort of look at how their technology may compare to the current standard of care, and sort of really highlight the added value of the technology that they're looking to develop. This brings me on to the rationale and sort of emphasising why the specific solution you're looking to develop will work. And this is underpinned by a target product profile, which many applicants struggle to articulate, particularly at the early stages. But really what we're looking for here is that link between the unmet need and the rationale. And the target product profile really is defining right from the very start of your project what your product or solution will look like, what attributes would it have to have in order to be clinically and potentially commercially successful. This target product profile should then be linked into your success criteria and milestones. And in this way, it's really important that right up front you incorporate clear, achievable, smart milestones, whilst also identifying the risks in a project and sort of how you're going to address these and mitigate against potential risks that might arise. There's also deliverability to consider, and quite often that isn't sort of something which applicants have considered before if they're not used to applying for more translational funding. But it centres around thinking about how the project will actually be conducted and by who. You know, do you have the team in place to deliver the project? Do you need to access outside resources? And if so, who might they be? And, you know, do you have access to them? All these things are really important to consider up front. And then finally, obviously, what underpins a lot of our funding is patient benefit. So really outlining that route to patients right at the start of your application is very important. And that includes sort of considering any regulatory considerations, you know, what a data package might look like in order to get regulatory approval, thinking about the competition and the market landscape, and also access to future funding. You know, once your current project has been completed, once you've achieved your project milestones, what's next? That's a really key thing to consider in order to really drive the development forward. Another thing just to flag here as well is obviously intellectual property and freedom to operate considerations. So as always, we would urge applicants to engage with their tech transfer organisation as soon as possible. And we work very closely both with applicants and with their respective tech transfer offices and translational research offices as well, in order to make sure that, you know, all of these things have been considered and it's really robust right at the front. Right at the start of the project, sorry. So with that, I would say thank you very much for listening, and I welcome any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. So our next speaker will be Catherine from the EPSRC.
So hi everyone, I'm Catherine Freeman from the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. So we fund research and training into engineering and physical sciences. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of context about EPSRC and where we sit. Then some sort of tools that we have available to help you with translation. And then finally I'll go through some sort of opportunities that we have available in the future that you can apply to, and then some hints and tips as well. So first of all, just to explain where EPSRC sits. So we are part of UK Research and Innovation. So we work with government to invest £7 billion into research and innovation. And we're one of 8 other organisations that form part of UKRI. And my colleague from the Medical Research Council will talk afterwards. So I thought I'd just show really quickly this slide just to highlight. So this is our delivery plan that we've published recently. And it's just to highlight, we've got these 8 strategic priorities, but one of them is in transforming health and healthcare. So we have quite a big priority around health in our council. So this slide just gives you an overview of what our portfolio looks like. So the value of the EPSRC health portfolio, so of live grants, is around 896 million, and around 300 million of that is in healthcare technologies. So we fund things through various means. So we have sort of fellowships, we have standard grants, and we have more managed strategic activities as well, which I'll show you some of those. And then we work in partnership with lots of other organisations to try and help translate products into the health space. So this is our current strategy that we're actually refreshing at the moment. So we have 4 grand challenges, and a lot of our strategic activities will be based around these. So we have one around developing future therapies, one around looking at physical interventions, one looking at optimising treatments, and one around transforming community health and care. And then we have these cross-cutting capabilities, which are research that we, within engineering and physical sciences, that we think can help meet those grand challenges. And then finally, just at the bottom there, we have what's called an Impact and Translation Toolkit, which is a resource on our website. And I'll just give you a bit more information on that on the next slide. But just to say, overall, our team, kind of the goal of our team is to work with researchers and fund research in engineering and physical sciences that will have an impact in health. So we're all about working in partnership with others and sort of helping to stimulate that translation. So this is our Impact and Translation Toolkit. So it's a resource that we have on our website, and it just provides some information on the different areas that you might need to, I guess, tackle when you're thinking about translating a product into the health space. So we have various resources and information, and also sort of additional information linked on our web pages to these kind of areas. So things like ethics, stakeholder engagement, regulation, and we also highlight what resources you can actually request in your grant application as well. So please do have a look. I've just put the link there. I think we're going to share the slides after, so if that's useful, you can have a look at those. So I just wanted to briefly say that we're refreshing our healthcare technology strategy at the moment. So the diagram I showed you before, we're actually that'll be a new diagram. We'll have a new strategy in the new year. What we've done is we've done quite a bit of community consultation. We've done quite a few workshops in these areas that are listed on the slide there. And we have a draft strategy that's out for consultation at the moment. So if you did want to have a look at that, you can provide feedback on that strategy. And that closes on the 1st of December. The reason why I wanted to just highlight the new strategy in this context as well is that we've identified translation readiness as sort of a key priority. So we just wanted to highlight that we need to think of some resources and some ways that we can help researchers in that area. And then just to highlight as well, public and patient involvement and engagement has come up as really important in our research. So we do have a strand in our new strategy around that as well. So just really quickly, I just wanted to go through PPIE, patient and public involvement. So we've had a project for the last year or so, just working with our researchers and our community, just thinking about how we can improve that within our healthcare technologies research applications. And obviously it's a really important part of translation, having that PPIE engagement in your research. So one of the things we've done is, as part of UKRI, we've signed a commitment to improve public involvement in health and social care research. And what we'll also be doing over the next few months, so this slide is just showing we're going to produce some guidance and support and also some case studies about what other researchers have done in this area. So that will be available on our website once the new strategy is launched in February. Okay, so I just thought, now I'll move on to talk about some of our funding schemes. So just to show, we are sitting at the top there. So our funding schemes go right from very early discovery, basic research in engineering and physical sciences, right up to sort of first tests in humans, so sort of proof of concept tests. We fund everything up to clinical trials, but we don't fund clinical trials. And then we sort of work with other funders in our funding schemes to try and push translation forward. So I just thought I'd give a bit of an explanation about some of the things we do around translation within EPSLC and healthcare technologies. So one of the things we do within our funding opportunities is we try to focus on the highest priority healthcare challenges. We also, as I said, have sort of partnerships with other funders so that we can really push that translation forward. We try to promote multidisciplinary working, so a lot of our funding opportunities try to promote that. And then we also try to maximise sort of business, charity, clinical engagement in all of our projects. So I thought I'd just give some examples of some of the partnerships we've had and schemes we've had in the past. We're looking to, for a lot of these schemes, we're looking at thinking about what we're going to do with them in the future and maybe running them again. So I just thought I'd give a bit of a flavour of the kind of things we've done. So first of all, we've got this strategic partnership with Cancer Research UK. We've done various initiatives. One was around multidisciplinary projects. So we've had 25 million around that, and it's allowing cancer researchers to work with our EPSLC researchers. And all of that was around early detection of cancer. So we're working with CI UK to look at what we might want to do next in that space. So please do talk to us if you've got ideas around that. We also have a partnership with Welcome. So we funded in 2016 2 centres. This was mainly infrastructure funding, but this was really to promote the early stage engineering and physical sciences and actually getting that translated. And they've managed to do some really great clinical studies, and it's been translated a lot more quickly than some of our original schemes. So that's been a really useful partnership in sort of getting that translation going. Another scheme that we had a partnership with Asthma UK and NIHR and the British Lung Foundation back in 2020. This was quite an interesting scheme in that we were looking for technologies that supported diagnosis, monitoring and management of asthma. But what we did was we are allowing successful applicants sort of joining them up with NIHR towards the end of the grant to kind of ensure that they can apply for I4I funding. So we're kind of, I guess, trialling different schemes to see how we can support that translation. Just a couple of other past opportunities, because we're going to look to run them again, so I thought I'd highlight them and then I'll move on to sort of some future funding. So we've run in the past some sandpits, which is basically an interactive workshop where the researchers from all different disciplines work together, and at the end they pitch research projects, and we give them funding at the end of the 5-day workshop. We had one fairly recently in digital technologies for improving self-monitoring. We're looking to run another one of those in the next couple of years, so please look out for that opportunity. We've also, another scheme that we're looking to do again, we have healthcare impact partnerships. So this is looking to enable researchers to progress their previously funded EPSLC research into impact within the healthcare space. So we did a bit of an evaluation of that. It's on our website, the link there. But basically it showed that scheme has really helped progress a lot of those research projects along the translational pathway. I just wanted to highlight, so this is a current opportunity that we have available at the moment. It's another partnership one. So it's around systems engineering innovation for looking at multiple long-term conditions. We have this nice acronym, SEISMIC. So we're working in partnership with NIHR around that. So there's initial funding for a development phase, which is to get researchers to work together and do some pilot funding. So it's sort of 200k. And then after 18 months, you'll be invited to apply for a more substantial funding, which is a few £1 million hub. And that's really looking at systems approaches to improving services for people with multiple long-term conditions and their carers. So we've already mentioned impact acceleration accounts, so I'll quickly move on because I don't have much time. So just a couple of slides now on proposal guidance. So when you're applying to EPSLC, here's some things that sort of peer reviewers have picked up over the years. So the first one is just considering your audience. So in EPSLC, you work quite closely you've got different people reading your proposal, so just remembering that it's going to a portfolio manager, first of all, that it's going to peer reviewers who are more expert in the area, but it's also going to be read by panel members who are more generalist. Quality is always our primary criteria in all of our schemes, so just highlighting the research quality. Describing the novelty and added value of the research as well as a common thing that's picked up by reviewers. And then finally, the methodology and work plan is a really common thing that's picked up by reviewers, so just being really clear around that. And then please just come and talk to us if you want to apply to us. I've got some, I'll move on. Here's our contact details for the healthcare technologies team. If you want to talk to us about any proposals, please get in touch and we're happy to chat to you about the best scheme for you and any advice that we can give you. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So our next speaker is Sophie from MRC.
Hi everyone, and thanks to Catherine for leading the way. I made them change the order of the agenda so that Catherine could do the hard work in introducing UKRI. So I've kind of I'm not giving a huge amount of background about MRC and some of the more strategic work we do, but really focusing on the funding schemes because I guess all of you just really want the money. But just to show you that we have an annual research programmes budget of about £700 million, or between 7 and 800 million a year, and pretty consistently about 70% of that goes to discovery science and 30% to translation. So we feel that that balance is about right at the moment, and everyone else feels that there should be more on one side or the other, but this is kind of coding of all sorts of different funding, so research programmes, but also our units, institutes, infrastructural investments, fellowships, and we deliver all of this through partnerships with universities, charities, other research councils, Innovate, NIHR, and with partnerships with industry as well, both through kind of higher level strategic schemes and activities, but also on a project by project basis. I'll come back to that later. So if you look at our translational, our dedicated schemes for funding translation, we have a budget of about 70 million a year, and it's split between these schemes. So I'll go on to these in detail in a minute, and we've also set them on this. Oh, yeah, those are the budgets, the MRC contributions to those budgets per annum, and I've set them. I didn't realise this would do this. I'll get more on there first. So like Catherine said, we've put all of the schemes on one slide for EPSLC MRC and NIHR, because we're trying to show that between us we sort of try and cover all of the stages on this diagram, except for the adoption stage, but that comes later. And just to say as well, if you know, behind the scenes between MRC and NIHR and between MRC and other research councils, we talk all the time about individual proposals to make sure that they don't fall between the gaps. So, you know, if you have a proposal and you're not sure if it should be EPSRC or MRC, either come and talk to us first, but also if you submit it, we'll find a way to make it work. And we have cross-council reciprocal funding agreements that kind of happen behind the scenes to make sure that it's as seamless as possible. So again, I won't talk about the impact acceleration account, but Manchester has a healthy award. I think it's 1.5 million over the next 3 years to support projects. And we really love this scheme because it really has a great follow-on impact. These numbers don't add up to 100% for some reason, but maybe they've been counted, maybe they fit into multiple categories, but we've seen out of an evaluation of the whole programme so far that most of the projects that are completed have either gone on to be licensed or to spin out companies or have gone on to get follow-on funding. And if they've shown no confidence in concept, that's also useful information. Our flagship scheme is, translational scheme is the DPFS, which is not a great name, but it does do what it says on the tin. So the point of the DPFS is to progress academic-led research along the translational pathway, de-risking academic research to get it to the next stage, whether that be more research council funding, NIHR funding, or investment from a company or VC or whatever. The budget for that is about 30 million a year, and there's 3 deadlines a year, and there really are no restrictions on duration or value. These are kind of product development grants, so they're not exploring something really. They are about what are the experiments you need to do to get your product or your solution towards the clinic. And so they're milestone based as well. And these milestones allow us to gate risk within a project. And you can hold consecutive DPFS awards if that's appropriate. And it doesn't matter where the previous funding came from either. Within remit for this is where it sits on this kind of simplified pathway, but it could be development, so early stage development of a prototype for a medical device, for example, preclinical testing of a small molecule drug, including GMP manufacture of new formulations or antibody therapies, through to phase 1 studies, so testing first in humans and safety and dose finding, and also phase 2A studies, so getting the proof of concept of efficacy as well that will take you forward to further funding. We don't have any restrictions on modality, so it can be novel therapeutic entities, devices, diagnostics, imaging, surgical interventions, behavioural interventions, and also repurposing studies. So not finding new repurposing candidates, but doing the vital kind of preclinical and clinical testing to take repurposed candidates forward. And we also we don't get many applications in this area, so we don't have many case studies to tell you about, but we would like to fund research tools that increase the efficiency of developing interventions, so new models or platforms that will improve R&D in academia and or industry. And it's all about clinical need, whether that clinical need is in a lower middle income country or the UK. And if it doesn't fit in that in-remit bit, there's somewhere else for it to go. There should be either within MRC or within other funders. So this is to show you that over the past, since I think the scheme started in 2008, so out of about 300 projects, we really do cover a wide range of types of intervention. And in this others category at the bottom is, like I said, where things like behavioural interventions, surgical interventions, and these research tools and platform technologies come. I also wanted to highlight another scheme which started a couple of years ago, but it was a bit kind of lost in the COVID madness, I think. But we've set up a new experimental medicine panel. MRC's always funded experimental medicine, but it used to kind of go between the research boards where it ended up being quite expensive and maybe not quite as competitive as some of the other applications. So we've set up this dedicated scheme with a £10 million annual budget. There's 2 rounds a year, and the whole point of this and why it's different from DPFS is that it's about understanding disease mechanism. So you may be kind of incidentally generating data to support development of a product or an intervention, but it has to be powered for a mechanistic hypothesis, and it has to be done in humans. So, oops, it says connection lost, attempting reconnect. How do I do? Oh, use the screen. So yes, we were told to kind of do hints and tips, and again, building on Laura and Catherine's tips, I don't disagree with any of those. Those are the most important ones. I've underlined my most important one at the top, which is if you're applying to any of our schemes, just come and talk to us. There's a whole team of us, and that's basically what our job is. That's what we're there for, is to help you decide which is the right scheme for you and share our experience of, 1 minute left, share our experience of what we've heard the panel say about applications before. So some of the kind of pitfalls and that people trip over all the time is not having the right team. Statisticians, crucially, should be part of a team, not just an add-on or we'll speak to them when we have to. You have to clearly state the clinical need and convince a broad panel of experts, but not maybe specific experts in your area of the need. Designing milestones is something that is harder than it seems. They have to be really meaningful, quantitative, and that will actually de-risk the progression of the project. There's a lot of guidance for our schemes, and there's a lot of other resources available, and Catherine earlier mentioned using local expertise, so speak to people who have DPFS awards. There's a caveat later on that, but consider where your project fits on the pathway to patients, so make sure that the project you're designing will get you to the next stage. So don't cut yourself short and leave yourself a gap to get to the next stage of funding. Consider partnerships and opportunities for commercialisation, but people come and speak to me all the time and say, but there's no IP, so I'm not eligible. That's not true. You don't have to have a partner. It doesn't make your application less competitive, but you have to show that you've considered the best route to reach patients, which might be to have a commercial partner, and make sure you understand the assessment process. So just, I think my key one of the don'ts is don't believe the myths surrounding DPFS. So when it first started, it did look quite different, and you may hear people who applied 10 years ago say, this won't work for you. But so use local resources and advice from people who kind of are more familiar with it more recently, because there are other myths about size of projects as well. So these slides will be shared afterwards, so I've put our contact details. Again, I've lost the connection again. Oh. There's some information about the work, if you are working with an industry partner. That's a big, busy slide you can look at later, but that's if you're looking for a small molecule, the starting point for a therapeutic target. Here's our contact details, and here's some other resources that you can click on at your leisure. that might help you design your project. And I'll be around until about 5 if you want to speak to me. Thank you. It's not moving on very well.
Right,
Just leave it there. Sorry.
Great, thank you very much, Sophie. So our last speaker from this session is Juliana from NIHR, and then we'll have some Q&A session.
Thank you. Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Juliana Callahan. I'm the acting head of the Efficacy and Mechanisms Evaluation Programme. And today I'll be talking a bit about the NIHR. So I'll cover it kind of generally, and then I'll kind of focus a bit more on the Efficacy and Mechanisms Evaluation Programme, EME, but also touch on some of the other translational programmes as well. So I'll just be running through, as I say, this. Again, I'll try and end on some hints and tips as well, like the others, although, to be honest, they're pretty similar. So if we don't get to that bit, again, slides will be shared, so you can look at it at your leisure. Okay, so the NIHR, so funds, we fund and enable the delivery of health and social care research. And we do this through supporting research projects, programmes, individuals through career development, fellowships, and through infrastructure funding as well. So the mission is to improve the health and wealth of the nation through research. And we do this through 6 sort of pillars. So the first is that we fund high quality research in both the NHS and also in social care settings as well. We invest in infrastructure so that this research can be delivered. We partner with patients and service users, carers, communities, making sure that the research that we fund actually meets needs of the user. We train and support researchers, as I say, through career development, fellowships, for example. We also collaborate with other public funders and with charities and industry as well. And we also support applied global health research, which is undertaken in low and middle income countries. So it's this first one that I wanted to focus on really today, so the funding of research, and we do this through our research programmes. So there are 9 research programmes that cover the breadth of NIHR, covering the breadth of sort of clinical right the way through to health and social care. Each of these acronyms I won't go into the names of, but I have got a link there on the slides that you can click on, you can take them through. But yeah, basically the programmes all cover clinical evaluation, translation, health and services delivery, technology development, public health research, as well as social care. So looking at the translational funding research landscape. So again, I have the same slide as Sophie and Catherine. So just trying to articulate there where the EME programme is jointly funded by NIHR and MRC. So it's actually a jointly funded programme. NIHR manage it, but the funds come equally from both partners. So as Sophie said, we do very much work towards working together and that there shouldn't be gaps between different funders. So another NIHR scheme, the HTA programme, which you see sort of butts on the end of the EME programme, that's the Health Technology Assessment Programme. That covers the sort of larger evaluative studies, but I'll come on to that. And then we have the NIHR I4I, which is the Invention for Innovation Programme, and that really does supports both technology development through to clinical and application thereof, and they have a few schemes that sort of span that entire breadth. There is also the MRC and NIHR, which again is a jointly funded scheme for the Better Methods, Better Research panel, and that supports standalone methodological studies. Okay, so again, talking about this funding landscape, so really thinking about it in simple terms, we think of like the MRC is the can it work sort of science, so looking at that discovery science through to those first in human studies. Efficacy and mechanisms evaluation can then pick up from that, as you can see, it sort of butts on the end of DPFS. So that's really asking, does it work? So is it efficacious? And HTA, the health technology assessment, is asking, is it worth it? The effectiveness of technologies. So focusing more on EME and HTA. So EME is, does does it work and how? So that's looking at your efficacy and your mechanism of action of the intervention in the study. And the programme supports studies coming into it through 3 forms. You can either do efficacy alone, mechanistic study alone, which could be butted onto another NIHR funded study, or combined mechanistic and efficacious question studies. HTA, so that's the is it worth it? So this is really looking at you're evaluating the clinical and cost effectiveness of an intervention or a diagnostic or technology within its setting. And that research is typically undertaken in comparison with a standard of care intervention. And again, more information about HTA is on the link at the bottom there. So a bit more detail about EMI. So as I said, we research, we fund research, apologies, to determine the proof of clinical efficacy, the size of the effect and the safety, and it's in a well-defined patient populations, whereas HTA you would be looking at how an intervention is going to be used ultimately within clinical practice, where obviously your patient population is broad. Because you're asking an efficacy question here, it's generally a smaller cohort patient population. So we have a broad range of interventions in our portfolio, so from kind of novel technologies, therapeutics, through to psychological-based, talking therapies, complex interventions. So a real range, and through to the social care space as well. Our research is hypothesis-driven. That's what we fund. So we don't support hypothesis generating. So that's where I'd be working with Sophie and her team to sort of go back to MRC around hypothesis generating. EMI will be looking at that hypothesis testing research. And we also support studies. Again, it's novel, infrequently used studies design, so it's really trying to get the most out of the research that's being undertaken. So someone mentioned earlier today about the less wastage in research. That's how we try and support that objective too. And then the ways we support that pull-through of research. So we've talked about the valley of death and trying to bring research forward. And so EMI supports this in a few ways, where we'll support a study, for example, where there's an embedded pilot or feasibility study, but where the main study sits within the remit of the programme. So again, it's kind of helping you to kind of bring that study through. Or we might, for example, we've got some where there's a final development of an intervention, just preceding a main clinical trial. And again, someone else mentioned about milestoning projects. Again, that's something else we do, so we can have a linked series of stages within a project in order to try and help that ongoing development of the translation. I would say for those pilot and that early, that late kind of development of a technology, that can only account for a quarter of the study, both within the time and the cost of the study. So you'd be looking at sort of 25% of the study. So what we won't fund, so we don't do the large effectiveness, that's HTA's space. We don't do the hypothesis generating, that's MRC's space. Confirmatory studies or minor modifications, again, we don't do incremental work, and the research is into areas that are primarily within the UK, so UK health need. And we don't support animal studies either. Again, that's MRC space. So I thought it might be helpful just to talk about the application and the review process. So applications come into us through 2 different sort of work streams. There's always the researcher-led work stream, which is basically researchers can propose any area of research. Oh, 1 minute, okay. And there's the commissioned work stream, which is where we've identified areas of need. And so we put out calls that are specifically to stimulate research in those areas. We have a 2-stage application process. So stage 1's come in. They are pre-filtered, basically go to committee and you get feedback. And we give feedback to proposals whether they're shortlisted or if they're rejected. So hopefully we're trying to, the mantra of the EMI committee is we're a funding committee, not a rejection committee. So we're trying to help the research be taken forward in whatever means. The stage 2 application is then, that's where we enter our peer review stage. So applicants then get the opportunity to respond to that peer review as well, and then the committee review overall the application, and together with all the responses to the committee feedback previously from stage 1 and to the peer review feedback. And then final hints and tips. I would just say, yeah, the biggest one is please speak to us. I've put up our email address there. If you send us a PICO, we can take a look at it. We can discuss that with our consultant advisor who we have within the team, and we can get back to you with any support. Again, I'll share these. I think the most, in terms of the research question, I think a really key one for us would be make sure that you have PPI involved, and that research question is you demonstrate that it's of real importance. The study design, I think the most important one out of there, I'd say speak to the RDS. I know we had a talk earlier, but they really are fantastic, and speak to your CTUs as well. Your research team, make sure you've got all the skills and expertise that you need within that, including PPI. That is very, very important. And making sure it's deliverable. Again, I've put up there the guidance for the funding, so the Accord guidance, please look at that. And dissemination and impact, where you're going next, sorry. And then in terms of, and please, yeah, the feedback that you get through our review process, please engage with that and respond to it, because that really can help the committee in making their decisions about the work, and also then providing you with further feedback. And then, yes, thank you very much. And there's the link to our page.
So yeah, any questions for any of the speakers so far this afternoon? No, everyone understands it all. Fantastic. Okay, I'll come up with a quick one. Laura, how do you define rare disease? Is that do you have a strict definition of that, or is it?
That's a very good question. So for us, when we're reviewing projects which are in the rare disease space, so a rare disease we typically consider to be 1 in 2,000 of the general population, and then ultra rare would be 1 in 50,000. So we sort of use that as our criteria, really.
And do you take any consideration into areas that are well funded by maybe other charities, like oncology, for example? Is there any remit on disease area, or is it anything that fits the rare disease remit?
Yeah, so anything that fits the anything that fits the rare disease remit is considered. As I sort of mentioned when I was speaking, we take quite a collaborative approach with applicants. So usually it starts by just an email in our inbox, someone saying, hi, I have this rare disease project, can you take a look at it, can we discuss further? So any sort of inquiry is welcome, and then we sort of go from there, really. But yeah, as long as it's within that rare disease remit, there's a clear unmet medical need, then we tend to at least consider it.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Anyone else from the audience have any questions?
Hi, a more general question about UKRI. So is there any mechanism from UKRI to actually push the research from governmental funded to VC and investment people? What are the links you have with general investment community across the UK, and how do you advertise the research coming out of UKRI so that they can take it on to the next stage?
I'll pass over to Catherine in a minute, but for me I'd say that's something which we hope that universities, TROs and TTOs will be able to help with primarily. We don't broker any kind of relationships with that, but we definitely understand that that's where a gap is. And EPSRC have some great schemes to help with that, or, you know, toolkits and things which are applicable across UKRI.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I was going to say is maybe Innovate UK as well. Probably have some schemes and things. Like we can maybe get back to you on some more information. Maybe share it with our slides. But I'm sure Innovate UK have some good links as well for you. Some of their sort of biomedical catalyst programs as well that sort of link to that. Yeah.